Chapter 1. Friday night lights dimmed. The final bell of Riverton Bend High School rang with a note of finality, echoing through the hallways thronged with students. The air was charged with a frenetic energy, a blend of school spirit and the anticipation of the upcoming football game against their longtime rivals, the Eastwood Elks. Banners in vibrant blue and gold adorned the walls, each one emblazoned with the fierce visage of Rocky the River Otter, the school mascot that rallied the town's spirit like no other. Among the sea of excitement wandered Henry Hawk Smart, his sharp eyes scanning more than the faces of his fellow students. He took in every detail, from the excited flutter of pom-poms to the way the quarterback's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. To Henry, every detail was a piece of a puzzle waiting to be solved, a story waiting to be told. As he made his way against the current of students, a sudden hush fell over the crowd. Whispers cut through the murmurs, spreading a ripple of concern that reached Henry's ears. "Rocky's gone," they said, one voice to another, until the message reached the front steps where Henry stood. "What do you mean, gone?" Henry asked, turning to the source of the commotion, a petite girl with a cheerleader's uniform and a worried frown. "It's Rocky, the head cheerleader," Jenna replied, her hands wringing the hem of her skirt. "The costume's missing. We can't find it anywhere, and you know what tonight is." And Leo Baxter sidled up beside him, his curly red hair a stark contrast to Henry's chestnut locks. "A game without Rocky." Leo shook his head. "That's like peanut butter without jelly." Jenna's frown deepened. "This isn't a joke, Leo. Coach is going to flip, and the team's morale will hit the floor." Henry considered the dilemma, his mind already ticking through the possibilities. "When was the last time someone saw the costume?" he inquired, his tone businesslike. "The janitor," Jenna said, nodding toward an older man mopping the floors at the end of the hall. "Mr. Simmons. He said he saw it last in the locker room when he was cleaning up after practice." Without another word, Henry set off towards the janitor, with Leo a constant presence at his side. "Mr. Simmons!" Henry greeted the janitor, who looked up from his task, a weary smile on his lined face. Henry, here for the game, I reckon." Mr. Simmons leaned on his mop, casting a long shadow in the fluorescent-lit hallway. "Hear about the mascot costume," Henry said. "Do you remember anything unusual when you saw it last?" Mr. Simmons scratched his head, leaving a streak of greyish water in his white hair. "Unusual? Well, now that you mention it, there was a bit of a ruckus outside the locker room. Some of the Eastwood boys, I think, poking around where they shouldn't." Leo's eyebrows raised. "A ruckus, you say? That's clue number 1, Hawk." Henry nodded, filing the information away. "Thank you, Mr. Simmons. We'll take a look around. Maybe it's just misplaced." But as the duo entered the locker room, the absence of Rocky's costume was as clear as day. The shelf where it should have been was empty, save for a thin layer of dust that seemed oddly undisturbed. Henry knelt down, his fingers hovering just above the surface. "Look at this, Leo," Henry murmured. "The dust. It's settled everywhere except for the shape of the costume. It's like it was lifted straight up into the air." "Someone was really careful in taking it," Leo added. "Too careful." The locker room was silent except for the distant sounds of the crowd gathering in the stands. Henry stood, a determined glint in his eye. "This isn't a simple case of misplacement. This is deliberate. Someone took Rocky, and we're going to find out who." Chapter 2. Gathering Clues. The halls of Riverton Bend High were deserted, the raucous energy of the day dissolved into echoing silence. Henry and Leo's footsteps were the only sound, a steady beat in the quiet as they made their way back to the scene of the crime. The locker room was dim, the only light filtering in from the windows high above. Dust motes danced in the air, disturbed by their entry. They moved methodically, checking each locker, each nook that could have concealed the missing mascot costume. Henry stopped short, a frown creasing his brow. "Feathers," he said, pointing to the ground. A sparse trail of blue and gold led towards the back of the room, stopping abruptly at a locked door. "Storage," Leo said, reading the faded sign above the door. "Do you think it is in there?" "One way to find out," Henry replied, kneeling to examine the lock. "It was a simple one, and it hadn't been tampered with. Locked from the inside," he observed. "How did the feathers get out here?" They left the mystery of the locked door for the moment, opting to speak with the janitor again. Mr. Simmons was still there, wringing out his mop in a bucket that had seen better days. "Mr. Simmons," Henry began, "do you have the key for the storage room in the locker room?" The janitor fumbled with his keys, a heavy ring jangling as he searched. "Sure do, but no one's been in there for ages. Just old equipment and such." As Mr. Simmons led them back to the locker room, Leo hung back, catching the eye of a sophomore from the Eastwood team. "Hey, weren't you hanging around here earlier?" he asked casually, a friendly grin on his face. He shifted uncomfortably. "Was just looking for the bathroom," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. Leo's grin widened, sensing the lie. "Come on, man! The bathroom's the other way! What were you really doing here?" Under Leo's amiable but persistent questioning, the boy hesitated, then admitted to being curious about Riverton's preparations for the game. "But I didn't take no costume," he added quickly. Henry, overhearing the confession, nodded to Leo. "Good catch," he said. They returned their focus to the storage room as Mr. Simmons unlocked the door with a creak. Inside, amidst the detritus of years past, the trail of feathers ended abruptly, but there was no sign of Rocky, the river otter. As they searched the clutter, Leo spotted a crumpled piece of paper tucked beneath an old trophy. It was a note, the handwriting hurried. "Meet me at the old gym. Midnight. It's time to dance." "Gym," Leo mused. "That's been closed for years." Henry took the note, turning it over in his hands. "Looks like we have our next stop. Someone's planning something for tonight." With a new lead in their hands, the pair made their way out of the locker room, the locked door and its secrets left behind for now. The old gymnasium, a relic of Riverton's past, awaited them in the shadows of the night. Chapter 3. The Rival's Secret. As the ancient clock atop Riverton Bend High School struck midnight, its chimes resonated through the silent streets. Reaching the old gymnasium, where shadows stretched long and deep, the gym stood like a forgotten monument, its glory days obscured by layers of darkness. Inside, memories of victories and defeats clung to the rafters. Henry Smart and Leo Baxter approached the gym's side entrance. The note they had found clutched tightly in Henry's hand. The door groaned a protest as it opened, revealing a cavernous space swallowed by shadow. Footsteps echoed in the vastness, each sound amplified by the silence. The walls were adorned with faded banners and photographs of teams long gone, their youthful exuberance frozen in time. Suddenly, a noise, the scuff of a shoe, stopped them in their tracks. From the darkness emerged figures, their features obscured but their jackets unmistakable, Eastwood Elks. "What are you doing here?" one of the figures challenged, his stance defensive. "We could ask you the same thing," Henry retorted, his voice steady despite the tension. Leo stepped forward, his hands open and voice calm. "We're not here to fight. We're on a hunt for Rocky, Riverton's mascot. It's gone missing." A moment of silence passed, the rivals eyeing each other warily. Then one of the Eastwood players, a tall boy with a voice softer than his frame suggested, spoke up. "We're not here for trouble. Truth is—" He hesitated. "Some of us. We're friends with Riverton players. This rivalry isn't all it seems." He and Leo exchanged a look of surprise. The revelation was unexpected. Friendships across rival lines were unheard of in the fervor of high school sports. "Why keep it a secret?" Leo asked, genuinely curious. "Families, expectations, history," another Eastwood player said, shrugging. "It's complicated." As the conversation unfolded, the group shared stories of clandestine meetings and shared struggles, painting a picture of unity that transcended the rivalry their schools upheld. "What about the mascot costume?" Henry interjected, bringing the topic back to their urgent quest. "Heard about it," the first Eastwood player admitted, "but we don't have it. Though there was talk about the old mascot, someone who never quite moved on." Henry's mind raced. The former mascot. Could they be bitter enough to steal Rocky? "It's possible," the boy nodded. "They never liked being replaced." With a new lead to follow, the meeting concluded with an unexpected handshake between the rivals, a sign of respect and the start of a potential new understanding. Henry and Leo stepped out of the gym, the night air crisp against their faces. The shadows of rivalry had indeed been deep, but they had also concealed friendships and alliances. The mystery of the missing mascot, however, remained unsolved, and a disgruntled former mascot loomed as a new suspect in the case of the missing mascot. Chapter 4. Unlikely Allies. The sign of a historic Riverton diner buzzed softly in the twilight, casting a warm glow on the chrome and tile of a bygone era. Inside, the air was rich with the scent of coffee and fried onions, and the booths were filled with an eclectic mix of townsfolk and high school students. In the farthest booth sat a group that would have raised eyebrows any other day. Henry and Leo from Riverton Bend, accompanied by 2 members of the Eastwood Elks. They were waiting for someone who, until recently, wore the costume of Rocky the River Otter with pride. A bell above the diner's door jingled, and in walked a figure whose gait was tinged with a hint of nostalgia, eyes sweeping over the diner like one revisiting a childhood home. The former mascot, Sam, wore a Riverton Bend high jacket, the blue and gold standing out against the diner's retro palette. "Sam," Leo called out, waving him over with a friendly smile that belied the tension of their inquiry. Sam approached, a questioning look in his eyes as he took in the unlikely assembly. "This is quite the gathering," he said, sliding into the booth. "To what do I owe the honor?" "We are here about Rocky," Henry said without preamble, his gaze direct. "It is gone missing." His face fell into lines of concern. "Missing? That's terrible! But why come to me?" "You were the last to wear it before the new mascot," one of the Eastwood players added, his tone careful. Sam sighed, a wistful note in his voice. "Yes, I was Rocky, and it meant everything to me. But times change, people move on. I'm not the mascot anymore." "But do you want to be?" Henry probed, watching Sam's reactions closely. The diner's hustle faded into the background as Sam paused, his eyes reflecting a tangle of emotions. "There's no denying I miss it, but steal it! That's absurd!" Leaned in, his demeanor warm but his observation sharp. "We believe you, Sam, but we found a note and a trail of feathers leading to a locked room. And, well," he hesitated, then pointed at Sam's sleeve, "you've got a feather right there on your jacket." All eyes turned to the blue and gold feather clinging to the fabric. Sam's face flushed with a mix of surprise and guilt. "Okay, I miss being Rocky. I won't lie," Sam confessed. "I was at the school, just walking around reminiscing, but I didn't take the costume, I swear." Henry and Leo exchanged a look. They had hit a wall, but intuition told them that Sam was holding back. Yet confrontation wouldn't yield results. They needed to build trust. "Sam," Henry started, "we know how much Rocky meant to you, and maybe you just wanted to feel that again. Help us find the costume, and we can all work this out, together." The former mascot met Henry's gaze, the standoff softening as the truth of those words sank in. "All right," Sam said finally. "I'll help you look. But where do we start?" "With the last place you saw it," Leo replied. The group nodded, a silent agreement passing between them. They had formed an alliance, one that crossed old boundaries and hurt feelings. Together they would find Rocky and, with any luck, restore a piece of Sam's lost pride along the way. Chapter 5. Rocky is back. Under the bright lights of the Riverton Bend High School football field, the bleachers throbbed with the energy of excited fans. The scoreboard counted down the minutes to halftime, and the cheerleaders rallied the crowd, their enthusiasm undimmed despite Rocky the River Otter's absence. Henry and Leo stood at the edge of the field, their attention fixed on Sam, the former mascot, who nervously fiddled with his own car key. "Are you ready to do this, Sam?" Henry asked, his tone supportive. He nodded, his hand trembling slightly as he handed the keys to Henry. "Let's do it. It's time to make things right." Together they walked towards the parking lot where Sam's car was parked, isolated under the glare of a street lamp. The crowd's roars were a distant echo, their anticipation hanging heavy in the air. Reaching the car, Sam unlocked the trunk with a quiet click. Inside, nestled among high school memorabilia, lay the missing Rocky costume. A mix of guilt and relief washed over Sam's face. I never meant for it to go this far," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Henry placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We understand, Sam. You missed being a part of it all, but now you can help bring Rocky back and be the hero of the game." With his help, they carried the costume back to the field. The crowd's initial murmurs of surprise quickly turned to cheers as Rocky the River Otter reappeared, larger than life and full of energy. The announcer's voice flown through the stadium. "Look who's back, thanks to the detective work of our own Henry Smart and Leo Baxter, and a little help from a Riverton legend. Rocky is here to cheer the team on." As Sam donned the costume once more, his movements were filled with a fervour that spread through the stands. The coach, spotting the return of the mascot, beckoned him over. "Sam, why don't you lead the team out for the second half?" This gesture, extending beyond mere forgiveness, was a recognition of Sam's place in the school's heart. Overwhelmed, Sam, now fully Rocky, nodded enthusiastically. The game resumed with a palpable energy. Riverton Bend's team, buoyed by the return of their mascot, secured a winning touchdown in the final moments. Amid the celebration, Henry stood contemplative. "It's amazing," he mused to Leo, "how something as simple as a costume can mean so much." He nodded, his eyes following the jubilant team and their mascot. "It's more than just a costume, Hawk. It's about being a part of something, about feeling seen and valued." Chapter 6. The Unraveling. Leo turned to Henry, a look of admiration in his eyes. "That was some sharp detective work back there. Hawk, how'd you piece it all together?" Henry smiled, his gaze lingering on the empty field where the drama had unfolded. It was a puzzle, for sure, but the pieces were there, just waiting to be put together. "First," Henry began, "it was about observing behavior. Sam had this way of looking at the mascot costume in the field, like he was missing a part of himself. Nostalgia can be powerful, and sometimes it drives people to do unexpected things." Leo nodded, recalling Sam's wistful expressions. "Yeah, I saw that look, like he was longing for the old days." "Exactly," Henry continued. Then there was the psychological angle. Being the mascot was a big deal for Sam. It gave him identity, a sense of belonging. Losing that, especially to someone new, could have hit him hard. It's not uncommon to want to reclaim a part of your life that made you feel important. "Makes sense," Leo said thoughtfully. "But what about the physical evidence?" "The feather," Henry said. "That was the key piece. Finding a feather from the costume on Sam's jacket was more than coincidence. It meant he had been in close contact with the costume recently, and it's not like those feathers just float around everywhere." Leo chuckled. "No, they definitely don't. But you also had to consider other suspects, right?" "Of course," Henry replied. "A good detective never tunnel. Visions on one suspect. We talked to a bunch of people, including members of the Eastwood team, but nothing pointed to them. And the more we learned, the clearer it became that Sam was our guy." "And his reaction when you confronted him?" Leo prompted. "Right," Henry said. "He was surprised but not shocked. It was like he was relieved to be caught in a way. That's when I knew for sure." Shook his head in admiration. "You really have a knack for this. So, what's next for Riverton Bend's top detective?" Henry laughed, standing up and stretching his arms. "For now, I think a good night's rest. But come tomorrow, who knows? Riverton Bend is full of mysteries, just waiting to be solved, and we'll be ready.